before they
Hi, and welcome to Invisible Walls, episode 202, right here in our brand new studio. No more press conference setup. We're all just kind of chilling in chairs this week. This is the way the show is going to be going forward. Obviously, still a huge emphasis on gameplay footage, so you're not going to see us too much. Only when Marcus and I decide to strangle each other, you'll be able to see it happen from now on. So, on the show today, we have the series producer of GameTrailers TV, Jeremy Hoffman.
Thanks for having me on.
He's actually on the entire show today, not just for one or two segments. He'll be here the whole time.
I just want to dedicate half my day to you guys at this point.
I'm saving all my love for you, bro.
We only invited him on for one segment, but he wouldn't leave.
Yeah.
The segment where we talk about my beard?
Yeah.
We also have Michael McWhorter, the managing editor of our news blog, Side Mission.
Hello.
And the jackhole, Marcus Beard.
Is that your new title, Jackhole?
The Jackhole? The Jackal, you mean? The love Jackal. Jackhole. No, fuck you.
That was on your business card, right?
No, it actually says arsehole, I think.
So anyway, this is our new little studio we're going to be doing the show in from now on. We're going to kick off the show today with sort of the big news stories that are making the rounds right now on the interwebs. Last week we were at GDC. We typically record the show on a Wednesday. We are now recording the show on Thursdays, so that'll make us one day more timely than we have been in the past. That's one of the reasons we're doing this on camera, is because the production for doing the avatars and stuff off camera was a lot more intense, believe it or not. So anyway, we were at GDC last week. We left like the very next day. This news breaks from an outlet called MCV in Europe, I believe.
It's a UK trade website. Used to be a trade paper. I used to do a lot of work with them in the UK, but they're normally pretty reputable, or they used to be.
Which is why it's kind of surprising that they've broken this news, which we'll get into a discussion about. But they're saying that the next Xbox will not have a disk drive.
No.
Also saying it'll be out next year, which I think we all kind of guessed anyway. Although today, Microsoft says they are not going to show the next Xbox at E3. That's pretty disappointing. But let's get back to the big question, which is, now I wrote a column about this already, so I'm not going to get involved in this conversation too much. I'm going to let you guys kind of hash it out. Is a disc-free console even feasible?
No.
No, not in the next generation. I think they are smoking something very, very wacky indeed. If they are going to try it, I don't think.
Or somebody gave them a bad tip.
Yeah, I think. I was thinking if Microsoft did want to try that, it would be bizarre. I think we've discussed often enough, just sitting around, that the internet is not where it needs to be with regards to access. I mean, Xbox Live isn't even in every country on the planet. It's not in every market. There are whole swaths of the world where they have no XBLA.
There are swaths of the world where there's no electricity.
Well, there's also
That's another problem.
But even in the U.S., there's only a certain amount. I think it's 60%.
Something like that, yeah.
It's not a ton of people that are using Xbox Live.
Yeah, it's always right around
It's
half
not
of
just,
the user base.
It's just connected consoles. So 60% of their user base is connected to the internet.
Right.
And you look at the iPhone and the iPad, and you see that there's a really strong market for digital distribution, right?
Yeah.
And Xbox Live Arcade does
Steam.
great, and Steam does great, but it doesn't make sense for them to cut out the entire retail channel and cut out what is a very cheap way to store games that require 50 gigabytes worth of storage.
But there's another part of this too.
Yeah.
They cut out the retail. They cut out the used game sales.
Well, there have been previous reports that Microsoft may have devised a way to eliminate used game sales, and based on all the things that they're doing right now to try and fight used game sales, that makes a lot of sense.
Well, those reports also came out for the PS3. I remember hearing those stories where you're gonna be able to buy a PS3 game and it would only work on your console. That rumor happened as well. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think we're in that part of the life cycle of these consoles that every outlet's looking for a story. Any stupid rumor they hear, they run with, and it's just, there's no way. They're just like, I've said before, at my house, I live with 3 other guys that play a lot of video games, are connected to the internet. We have lots of devices. We have 2 internet lines in our house to support us. And even then, I'm trying to download my patches for SWTOR, and it takes a while. And I just think to download a game that's going to be 25 gigs, it's quicker for me to run to a retail store across the street or to the Redbox at the Albertsons across the street from my house and get a game and be back home in 10 minutes.
Speaking of Redbox, I mean, is that an option? You get the new Xbox. It comes with what essentially is a little hard drive, but really they call it like the game drive or whatever. You walk to the Albertsons. There's a little machine sitting outside the Albertsons. You plug in your game drive, download whatever game you want, take it back, plug it back into your Xbox, off you go. Is that a feasible
I think that's the
alternative?
only way that if this was to come to pass. I mean, let's go back to the retail model for a moment. This would be the only way they could appease retail, because Walmart, Best Buy, GameStop, etc. would be mightily unhappy if all of a sudden you cannot buy 720 games. And they have their own digital kiosks. So to have those exclusively in there, that perhaps would be
that might be the rub too, though, is if you cut Walmart out of it, is Walmart going to let you put your little kiosk in the front of their store?
Or are they going to sell your console at all?
Right.
Well, and the other thing too is like if Microsoft does this, what if Sony doesn't do this? Then I'm not going to buy a console in which I can't actually put physical media into my machine and play on it.
We already know the Wii U is going to have physical media, and that's
we
coming soon.
still don't even know, talking about this whole next gen thing, what's going to happen to all my 360 downloadable games? What's going to happen?
We're hoping it's backwards compatible.
We're hoping, but I'm just saying, we don't even know how they're going to interact with downloadable games from a previous generation. I still don't trust for games having them downloadable. It takes a long time to download that stuff. Sure, I go in the Redbox line, but if there's 6 kids in front of me and they're trying to transfer 40 gigs of media onto a disc, am I really going to wait an hour and a half?
Well, I mean, they could have a pretty wide pipe between the machine and the card. I'm not so much concerned about that. How do you guys feel
we
about
transfer,
losing?
we shoot all of our content here for the show and for the site on cards.
Yeah.
And I shoot 60 gigs, and that plugs right into my MacBook, and that still takes 15 minutes to transfer.
60 gigs is a lot.
Right.
It's not that much bigger than some of the games we're playing right now.
Yeah, 25 gigs max.
Right, but that's this generation. What's it gonna be next gen?
Do they really need to go beyond 25 gigs? I mean,
some of the PlayStation 3 games pushed like the 50 gig dual layer.
Yeah.
So
well, that's because they're uncompressed audio. They're basically shoving WAV files onto those discs. Like, I get it. It increases fidelity. Now, how do you guys feel about the idea of no longer having anything physical to show for the money you've spent? Are you guys okay with that? Because I personally am. Like, I'm so tired of jamming my closet. I mean, I'm literally, every crevice of my apartment right now is jammed with a game or a controller or something gaming related. I know I'm getting sick of it. My wife has been tired of it for the last 4 years.
Look, we've been moving to anybody who's got a PC, half decent gaming PC, and has been playing World of Warcraft or bought anything on Steam over the last 2.5, 3, 4 years. I mean, they used to that. And I think, this is where, again, PC games have been ahead of the curve, and now we're seeing more of that with XBLA stuff, where XBLA games have gone from $10 to $15, and now there's some $20 games coming out there, ditto with PSN. And I think people are slowly, getting used to dropping, that larger amounts of money. I just think this whole, no disc in the 720 is absolute bunkum.
It's a pipe dream.
Well, how does it work? I mean, how does it work if my grandma wants to buy me a video game now? Like, if she's gonna have to give me a card that I have to
Amazon
plug
gift card.
in,
because Amazon will have a downloadable.
Or there's just a little barcode reader thing on the front of the machine. She sends you a little card. You just swipe it in, and there's the game. Plug your
She just
game
sends you a
drive
check
in.
for $8.
well, that's right, exactly. But it just, to me, it's like a lot of sales for games come over this holiday time where you're going out and you're buying Little Billy and all these, games for everyone. It's like, where does that go?
Well, at like Toys R Us, like when you buy games, you actually don't buy the game. You buy that little barcode and then you take it to the counter. They actually give you the game. Well, I mean, the system's
right. But then on Christmas Day, I get my game, and then I have to go. Toys R Us is closed.
Well, these things sit outside. They're not inside the stores.
I mean, and that's the thing. It'll probably be a code.
Redbox sits outside at 7-Eleven.
Out of 7-Eleven.
Yeah,
that's in most stores, like at retail stores, they're not.
But again,
that's what I'm
if
saying.
you have, I mean, when we're talking about the people, within this room, you'll have a card. You enter the card number on XBLA, and boom, it starts to download.
Yeah.
I understand.
But
that.
I think
I understand that completely. I think if we were the only ones that played games and it was only hardcore people that played games, it makes sense.
But I think
We're
the
gonna
hardcore
begin-
people might push it back on this more than anyone because they're the ones who really enjoy collecting.
Well, that's
creating
the
a
one
collection
point,
of games for the systems that
So
they buy.
one thing I want to mention here is that Microsoft did pursue a 2 SKU strategy with the Xbox 360.
Yeah.
One with no hard drive whatsoever, and one with. And so this may be a product of that. They may be looking at ways to defray the cost of the next Xbox.
Kind of like
They
the
may
PSP
be-
Go versus the typical PSP.
And maybe they'll offer 2 options for people like you and me who do not want to bring a ton of more, Blu-ray cases into their house.
What's the average Xbox size though, hard drive now? 250 gigs. So that's 10 games at 25 gigs. So what do? I have to delete a game.
I'm doing that already.
It.
Yeah.
I mean, I would imagine that next gen storage is there will be a leap. I mean, like,
500.
it could be a terabyte.
Terabyte,
I think this is a prime opportunity because we are one of the few sites that haven't really introduced a really stupid, scurrilous rumor. We should break that the 720 is actually going to come with recordable 8-track.
Sorry, I was born in the 80s. I don't know what you're talking about.
So I think we're all pretty much unanimous. None of us think it's feasible, possible.
I think it's an option. I don't think it's going to be the only option because I just don't see them ruling out such a huge retail market.
It's
just
too soon.
And bypassing a Blu-ray disc for like a flash card.
Do we all think maybe 10 years from now?
I could see,
Possibly.
yeah, but
Sure, yeah.
I think the biggest lead has to come from people, consumers, and their internet speeds at home. That's what it's going to come down to.
Yeah.
Most people don't. I mean, how many people out there can't even download a movie or watch? You hear people complain about streaming Netflix because their quality's not high enough.
Right.
Now I'm having to download a 20 gig game. I just don't think it's possible.
I'll be honest with you. I was on I had a different internet provider over Christmas. I was with AT&T, and it took me 3 days to download my pre-ordered version of the Old Republic. And I switched to a cable modem, and boom,
Right.
it's much better.
And I've got,
but until
and
everybody's
on the
got
other end, I'm on
broadband,
AT&T as well, and it took me about 4 hours to download it. So you live 10 miles from me. 15.
There's so many factors that factor.
That's what I'm saying. But
How many
there's
people around you are using it.
But there's so many factors that Microsoft can't control.
Yeah.
And why would they want it?
I think that's
just
why I say maybe 10 years from now when everybody has fiber optic internet.
Yeah, the PS5 or whatever it's
just
going to
don't
be.
partner with AT&T.
They could be better by then. The next big story, in fact, one that just broke before we came in this room, which is just showing why we're doing this now on a Thursday, why we're doing it live. We just found out that Diablo 3 has a release date, which is May 15th,
yeah.
the same day as Max Payne 3, which I don't see those games competing directly, but they are competing for dollars. People only have so much money to spend.
If the PC version, Mike pointed out earlier that the PC version of Max Payne is 2 weeks later. So if the PC version was coming out the same day,
But there's people like us, like you. We play PC and console. So some people go to the store. They're like, I got $60 to spend. Is it going to be the Max? Is it going to be the Diablo? And the other part is no player versus player in Diablo 3.
Yeah. So that's kind of a bummer. I mean,
kind of a big deal.
they made a big deal about that. I guess at the last BlizzCon where they had it playable, and now they said they've cut it for now because it just wasn't where they wanted it to be, and rather than make people wait another 6 months. And I even think, as much as Blizzard says, "Hey, it's done when it's done," this Activision shareholders are like, "Get your fucking game done."
Well, this is the
please."
first time I think where we're seeing it, right?
Yeah.
Where you're finally seeing the influence of Activision on Blizzard, where Activision's like, no. Maybe back in the old days, you guys could say we're putting it out when we're putting it out, but you guys need to get something into the
With-
I'd
they're laying off Warcraft's team members because that game is on the decline.
The subs are finally on the decline.
I'd actually counter the whole Activision effect. I mean, I'm the world's biggest Activision fan. I love talking them up. But I'd actually, my understanding going back to my Vivendi days, that when this takeover/merger happened, that basically Activision were told, you don't go near Blizzard. You don't tell Blizzard what to do. They are the golden child. They are always the golden child. They make more money than anybody else. You don't fuck with them. And I think, it's probably more a case of we need to get this out because World of Warcraft is, it's getting a huge bite taken out of it by the Old Republic, and Guild Wars 2 is coming this year, and a slew of other MMOs.
I'd also like to counter with, Activision was the golden child when WoW was the biggest game ever, and then Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 happened, and Activision probably has a little bit more pull now.
Yeah.
Like they're putting out games every year that sell just as well.
but Blizzard don't report into Activision, and Blizzard and Activision, the heads
report
into Vivendi Group.
Right. And everyone, everyone reports to the shareholders.
Vivendi owns those two companies. It's not Activision does not own Blizzard. That's the biggest misnomer in the history of this industry, that it was, Activision went and bought Sierra Blizzard. Actually, no, Vivendi Group went and bought Activision and merged the groups together. So that's the biggest misconception ever.
They still have shareholders.
But they do still have shareholders. But I think it's more a case of them realizing, oh God, we do have to get this out and get on with it. It's disappointing for those who like PvP from day one. I'm sure. I mean, I have to pray to God that they're not going to say we're going to save it for an expansion pack and then we'll charge you extra for it, because I mean we're still waiting on StarCraft. The next StarCraft 2 game, and Kung Fu Panda is coming out at the end of the year allegedly. So I mean they basically had to get it out at a certain point, and they have to cut the cord sometime.
Yeah, and I don't think StarCraft is not really due until early 2013 at this point, and I think they've kind of
the same time they're going to announce the next Xbox.
Yeah. But I think it's kind of a bummer, but I never really played PvP in Diablo 2, so I'm not upset. It doesn't really
But there are a lot of people who will be, and got to respect those folks.
Yeah.
So next story, layoffs at Obsidian, which lots of layoffs around the industry right now, and that's not really the big surprise. The big surprise is the news that kind of leaked out amongst all this stuff. Marcus, you want to...
Yeah, well, I mean, there's been a couple of gems from Obsidian this week. I mean, first of all, there was the layoffs where they had to, unfortunately, I mean, let's face it, we all hate hearing that anybody loses their job in this economy. But they're basically saying it's because a Xbox 720 game that was supposed to be first party for Microsoft got cancelled. So that's the first thing that they announced, and
I don't think they have ever officially announced that. That's kind of just come out through people who have been are no longer with the company and feel fine about talking about their projects. But
then the other thing that sort of like surfaced via Twitter over the last couple of days is that despite Fallout New Vegas selling very well, it was a straight cash job between Bethesda and Obsidian. Obsidian basically missed out on a lucrative bonus because their Metacritic only came to 84%, and the bonus level was at 85%. And it's interesting, there's a lot of people blowing up, it's like, oh, this is why Metacritic's disgusting, or oh, Bethesda, I can't believe you did this to these guys. I'm going to take a slightly different route and say, who the fuck...
I'm going to distance myself from this.
I'm not losing my temper. I'm just asking, who the fuck at Obsidian signed that fucking deal? I mean,
I think that's the biggest issue with Obsidian, right? Like, I feel like those guys, they're a talented group of storytellers.
Definitely. No, you're right.
They need a bigger QA department.
But I just feel like they always put themselves in really bad situations. Alpha Protocol, KOTOR 2, New Vegas. Like, we all know that...
Dungeon Siege 3.
Oh, yeah, that came out.
Yeah.
The other thing is you don't know how much they're getting paid to make these games.
Right.
I mean, they could have been given more off the top than they probably would have had to, or made off that game if they had done it themselves. So there's always parts of the deal. If you don't know all the parts, it's kind of hard to.
But if you're doing a bonus structure that's tailored to Metacritic, especially when you're looking at something that's
that is bullshit.
Well, I think it's
because Metacritic is bullshit.
Well, Metacritic is an absolute pain. The whole numbers rating system is so all over the place now. It was a smart piece of business by Bethesda, because it was win-win situation for them. If it sold enough, they had to pay out.
Well, they knew better than anyone how good the game was as well. So they're sitting there. They're like, this looks like it's probably going to come in. Around.
I think that deal was signed long before.
You would hope that deal was signed
long before. I think they probably looked at it as, we're going to give it to Obsidian. They'll do a great story, but then we've got to give them the engine, and they probably went and laughed because we know Obsidian, as Jeremy said, master storytellers. But when it comes to using other people's engines, they're just not that technically adept. I was
talking to Mike about Alpha Protocol yesterday.
Yeah.
And I was like, that game was so fun in terms of the story and RPG elements and the things that you could do, like, and how the story would be completely different. Like, we're gonna get into Mass Effect later, but like, that's the type of game where like, oh, you make one change and everything changes. And it's like, well, it kind of changes. But Alpha Protocol, things were actually changing. There's 4 of us playing it here at the office at the same time. Everyone had a completely different story.
Yeah.
But then you tried to shoot in that game and you just wanted to kill yourself. So it's like,
and I think
it's so disappointing because those guys have so much potential that I feel like they just don't have the technical.
I feel like
expertise.
they've never been ahead of anything, which is difficult.
Right.
They're always like contract kind of, guys who can do a cleanup job on a game.
Right.
They do number 2s.
Yep.
I know that doesn't sound very good, but they're Neverwinter Nights 2, KOTOR 2, and Fallout New Vegas, which is essentially Fallout 3 2.
Right.
But those guys have never really been ahead and financially secure. They've had a ton of layoffs.
Yeah.
But they also had a ton of canceled projects.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is they always seem to be in a bad
been down there
position.
a couple times, and they're like, "Don't look at that room. That was a game we were working on. It's not working. We're not working on that anymore."
But
And
it
it's
might
like,
come back.
I'd honestly say to
wow.
them, it's like, you know what, reinvent yourselves. I mean, perhaps move away from the whole, trying to do a full game and reinvent yourselves as a house people can go to for this incredibly fleshed out, phenomenal story experience and design experience. Because, it's almost like, was it George Lucas? I mean, he created the Star Wars universe and he could do some really good storytelling, but he couldn't direct for shit.
Right.
And that he's been found out with that. And I think that's what these guys need to do. They need to go off and they have these storytellers. They should exploit them and in the best possible way. And companies should use them just for that and say, all right, we've got our own coders, but you can work with them, and this is the designs you can implement, and literally go off and do that.
Do we know how many people are at that studio?
There's about 100 now, I think.
I mean, it feels like that studio. If they were working on a next-gen game, they're currently working on the South Park game,
and one other project.
and they're working on one other project. So it's like that's
a lot.
35 people on a team, though. Then
Yeah, they probably have.
maybe you could cancel a couple projects and then have
They probably have a
30
team of
people.
like 10 or 15 guys who are working on exploratory, R&D, working on initial concepts for games, and then once they have those fleshed out, then they bring the rest of the guys in to actually create the
Right,
game.
but I'm just saying, if they're currently working on 3 to 4 games, and it's not a huge studio,
It's way too much.
It's way too much. Like,
I
Two
actually
max.
think
focus on the things that focus on the one that's coming out next year, and have a small team working on the one that's coming out in 2 years.
Yeah.
I think it would be great if they could kind of reassess themselves like Double Fine did a couple years ago when they said, look, these huge Psychonauts and Brutal Legend caliber games are not really doing it for us. It's not exploiting our strengths. So let's do all these cool little projects. And, based on the success that they've had on Kickstarter and what it seems like the guys at NXIL are having with their Wasteland 2 Kickstarter, which passed
At
$1
this point
million
it's
today.
funded, right?
Yep. Which is kind of awesome. I would love to see those guys be able to take advantage of that platform to do some cool, lower production but
I just
still
don't
real
even
high
think
quality
at this, right, and you're
RPG.
saying Xbox Live platform or Kickstarter
PC.
platform?
Let's
Or
just do
PC.
PC,
It's like-
Where are the studios?
They're in
Irvine.
Irvine.
Okay, I mean, and look, Irvine is not the most expensive part of Southern California, but again, you've got to looking at the burn rate for having 3 or 4 teams. I mean, it might be an idea. Obsidian, perhaps move, relocate to Austin where it is significantly cheaper, and build a team together. Because if they want to go ahead and do these big games, without even going the Kickstarter route, they've got to pull in an engineering team who can really understand and use other people's engines. Look, it's really horrible for those who lost their jobs. I feel, and the other announcements that hit this morning with some of the websites losing their jobs as well. We feel for
Tough
those
time.
guys, but it's the nature of the.
But
beast.
yeah,
I
man.
mean,
But I think the real problem here is fuck those Metacritic prorated
that's
bonuses.
bullshit.
It sucks. It sucks that that's so standardized
it's
now.
been good. Yeah, it's been going on for years though.
The scariest thing that I heard today was some what implausibly disturbing conspiracy theory that some people in marketing might actually send copies of games to people who might intentionally score them lower to get the Metacritic average below the bonus level, which is seems outlandish and crazy.
I don't know if it's that outlandish,
but-
though.
I would not be.
Honestly,
you're talking
I mean,
about
if you think about it, the Metacritic scores, initially you have our score and probably like 4 or 5 other sites. That kind of is like where it always starts, it seems like. And then as time goes on, the score always goes down.
Yeah.
Always.
But you
Because
also
get-
have those people that didn't get the game when we got the game that
Well,
might
you-
be a little jaded
Well, you get
because they
people
don't feel
who
like they're
just
part of the
use
industry.
a low review as a way to try to get people to their website.
and to get attention.
And it works. I mean, if you look, most people look at like Metacritic or game rankings and they sort by score and they probably read the highest one and they go and they read the lowest one. It's the cheapest and easiest tactic in the on the entire internet to get people there.
The fact that Metacritic scores like a giant bomb 4 out of 5 as an 80,
Right.
and like a 3 out of 5, which is like
Well, that's the
these
problem.
scores
If
do not
everyone
line up.
gave,
It's
you know,
really
if everyone
screwed.
was a 100-point scale, then
Yeah.
Metacritic could be like, okay, well,
Well,
that's
when I-
okay. It's
When
a
I
little
worked
bit
at
better.
G4, we worked on a 5-point scale.
Yeah.
What's
And
been
we
our
even reached
biggest
out to
argument?
them and we said, look, this isn't how our scores work. We were like, look, a 5 is like a 95 and higher.
Yeah.
A 4 is like an 8 to like a 9 point. They wouldn't hear any of that. They're like, no. We have our way of figuring it out.
Which is weird because I know that a lot of outlets that don't score on a traditional scale or provide no scale at all can send Metacritic a number that's like that.
Well,
like, this is
keep
kind
in
of
mind,
our
this
number.
was 6 years ago.
And I'm sure
so
things
they may
have
changed their
changed
practice.
because
Yeah.
enough people complained
Well,
about
the whole
it.
thing is just
What was our-
completely
fucked.
What was our
it's
biggest
really-
argument over fear? This was a prime example.
This was a problem was because it wasn't really a 4 and it wasn't really a 5. So there's really no happy medium. When I was working in there, whenever Fear came out, and like, it's just the way it is. I couldn't give it a 5 because to me it was not a 9.5 or higher, but it was better than an 8 out of 10. So
One thing I want to make clear is I do not believe in this conspiracy theory that marketing people are
Well,
manipulating.
let's-
it wouldn't
Metacritic
surprise
score.
me
But
if it
let's-
happened.
when you
Right.
think
It
about
just
the millions
doesn't-
of dollars that are online,
Right.
you're
Let's-
like,
and
that's
their
classified.
bonuses.
Hang on,
Yeah, yeah.
let's-
Yeah, but the $1 million that are online, like, if a game has a 90 and everyone's talking about it, your game's going to sell more. So it's like you're shooting yourself in the foot
Well,
to
no.
not
I
give-
think where this would happen is if the game, and this is what I was getting at before, is if the game is kind of hovering around that 8.6,
Yeah.
8.7 after that initial rush of the first 5 sites come out. And they're like, well, honestly, our Metacritic going down to an 8.4 versus an 8.7 really isn't going to make that much of a difference for us financially at retail. However, we could save $100 million in bonuses we'd have to pay to the developer if we get it that 10th below. Suddenly you start sending it to those little sites who will give it bad scores trying to get
those-
people to
I need
come.
to take a
Those little
shower.
sites don't
And
qualify
that just
for
feels
that.
so
Yeah.
dirty, like
A lot-
hearing
a lot
that.
of them
Like,
do.
I mean,
You should go look at some of
Well,
the sites that count on Metacritic.
I looked. I looked with regards to
and
what
no
you
offense to
needed
any of those guys. I started
qualify.
on my own fan site. Much respect to everybody who does it, but the smaller you are, the more easy it is to be manipulated.
And let's just. I'll be pedantic for a second. We'll clarify one thing. Marketing people don't control who gets the games. It is the PR people. And
You don't think marketing people have the ability to grab a game off a big pile of them and put it in an envelope and send it to
send it,
somebody?
yeah.
Really?
Well, you know what? Not in my fucking lifetime. And literally, there are marketing people who still have the bruises from trying to pull that shit.
But you don't work everywhere, Marcus. There
Well,
are
no,
other
I
people
do-
who
I
are
know it's
unscrupulous.
changed, and it's changed. I would like.
But
to
also, a
think-
lot of teams now, the marketing and the PR people are the same people.
Right.
And I'm not going to say
How can you
na-
even tell anymore
I'm not,
who's
no,
marketing
but
and
I'm
PR?
like literally, I'm not going to say names. That there are
Yeah.
places that person handles both.
I would hope
For
that,
smaller
the last-
places, that is
Yeah,
true.
they have to.
for the last vestige of some sort of respectability for PR marketing departments in video games.
Do they still have that?
We're literally on the last.
Oh, okay.
This is the last head, holding the block up. That it doesn't sink to that, and I would like to think that in this case, knowing the Bethesda team as well as I do, having worked with a lot of them in the past, that they wouldn't go down this route.
Oh,
But-
yeah. I don't want to say that I'm accusing Bethesda.
Yeah,
of
I'm
doing
not,
that.
I mean,
That's
but I mean,
not-
there probably are some unscrupulous people who think about it. But I just got to go back to the first thing. Yeah,
Most of them
Metacritic-
are European PR people, though, right?
What?
All right, we got to wrap this up, guys. Marcus, you have the final comment.
Yeah, the
Good looking
Metacritic system is
exclusives on your
is
show
broken.
after this episode.
I
No,
think
I'd fight
we
for
all,
the European PR people.
ladies, talking. Yeah, the Metacritic system is totally broken, but I also think that whoever signed that deal without any sort of contingency or scale at Obsidian really needs their head read.
Okay, so we mentioned last week there's a ton of games at GDC that we haven't been able to talk about because they're under embargo, and one of those games is the Amazing Spider-Man. Now, I know you're probably groaning right now. You're like, I don't want to hear about the Spider-Man game. It's worth talking about because they've made some pretty drastic changes to it, all for the better, in my opinion, and so I think it's worth bringing up here on Invisible Walls to discuss.
This is my biggest question because big fan of Arkham City and Arkham Asylum and how those games were done. but the last couple of Spider-Man games have been what's the phrase I'm looking for?
Shit.
Yes. And it's interesting to see how and Activision, the last couple of X-Men games as well. I mean, they really turned the superhero franchises into dumps, the game dumps that were coming out in the middle of summer, absolutely horrible. So what has changed?
Well, to be honest with you, they've made the game a lot like Batman.
Which is not necessarily a bad thing.
Not at all. I think they've kind of laid down the blueprint there for what makes a good superhero game, and they're kind of following that blueprint. So the game does return to Manhattan, which is maybe a big deal for some people, and the web swinging has been completely redone.
Present day Manhattan.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and it is based loosely on the movie. The plot actually happens after the movie's over, so I probably wouldn't recommend playing this game until you've seen the new movie. But it takes place both outdoors and indoors, and they've completely redone the swinging mechanics. There's all this detective stuff inside now, where you effectively you can basically you can mark enemies and basically fly above the ceiling, pull them up, go stealth, go guns blazing if you want to. But the coolest change to me though is the way you can swing around the city now. They have this thing called Web Rush. So like in the past, you could free fall off a building and at the last minute swoop. Well, what they've done is with Web Rush is you essentially can look ahead and it will paint sort of silhouettes of Spider-Man on the environment. All you have to do is select that silhouette of Spider-Man, and then the system sort of triangulates that information and will have him sort of automatically parkour over to that spot. Once you get good at it, and as you're swinging, you can just point your cursor wherever you want and he will just sort of automatically go there. But it's not like he does it, real clunky or whatever. Like the animations and everything from going from point A to point B are absolutely awesome. It completely speeds up your ability, because if you want to, you can just shoot straight through the city without having to worry about the up and down swing. So on some of those missions where you have to get someplace in a certain amount of time, it's really easy to get there real quickly. Brand new engine, the game looks great.
Now that last bit though, that is optional though. You can do the traditional if you want to.
If you want to, but trust me, once you get used to Web Rush, you won't want to swing.
No, that's always been one of my biggest issues with the Spider-Man games is that you have 20 seconds to catch the Green Goblin, and the Green Goblin's flying, as the crow flies, and you basically hit one wrong building and you're gone.
Yeah, and it's really smart too, because they did it. It wasn't like a canned demo. We see those a lot. They're like, look at this cool feature, but it's the same area they've done that in 5 times. They literally just ripped through the whole city using the Web Rush. So
does he still shoot webs and you're flying off different things? There's a lot of variation, I guess.
Yep. He also has his web blaster this time, which they hadn't put in the game for a while. The game is looking really, really cool. Now here's the caveat: the game is coming out with the movie this summer, and I do have to admit, it's preview build, so we don't want to be too harsh on it because you assume they can always fix stuff. But truth be told, the game was a little buggy, and it's only a few months away.
And this is the same team that did Shattered Dimensions and Edge of Time, correct?
Right.
So,
which not exactly an amazing pedigree.
Well, and then that also means they've had, from finishing Edge of Time to this, it hasn't been too long.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they have multiple teams working on stuff, but
it's BNOX.
It's it's the Activision put a game out every year.
I mean, one of the great things about Batman, the Arkham City and Arkham Asylum games, is that it's not just the combat, and it's not just using the batarang or swinging around the city, but it's also the personality and the voice acting.
Yeah.
Now, did any of that come through? Because I mean, Spider-Man is a totally different character to Batman. He is snarky. He's got these little one-liners.
Yeah.
Is it Andrew Garfield who's doing the voice? Do they have these little one-liners that just make you feel like this kid?
They won't confirm yet whether they're going to have the voice actors from the movie in the game.
That means they
9 times out of 10 means
they don't.
no.
Real quick, what villains?
That or
have
they haven't
revealed
planned to
villains,
announce
or-
with
They've
someone.
revealed 2. They've revealed Rhino and Iguana so far.
Oh yeah, I did see that iguana.
We've had a couple trailers for the game. In fact, we had a trailer up before we went to GDC. We just hadn't actually seen the game in action. So, I really wanted to bring it up more because I know there's a lot of Spider-Man fans out there. To me, it was a very pleasant surprise, having checked out the last several Spider-Man games that were all pretty much crap. This one, they're on the right track. They have some really great ideas and some great mechanics. My question at this point is, are they going to be given enough time to really seal the deal? So we'll see.
This war has brought you here today. The next few hours will decide the fate of everyone in the galaxy.
All right, so finally, we're going to talk about Mass Effect 3 in depth. We've all got back from GDC. I don't think most of us have finished it yet. I think 3 of us haven't, and just Justin has because he reviewed the game.
Mike has over there, although I guess he can't speak.
Yeah,
on it
Mike,
just
who's
yet.
actually directing the show right now,
doing
has, but
important
he
stuff.
can't. He's not coming on. But we've all had a chance to play. I'm saying at least all of us have got 10 hours in right now, right?
Yeah, I'm
Is that
about
fair to
20
say?
or so. So yeah.
So, Justin, obviously we know your opinion. You did the review, and we want to be real careful here. We don't want to spoil anything for anybody. We're not going to talk about the ending, even though that seems to be the most controversial part of the game because some of us haven't got to it, and some of you haven't got to it. We don't want to spoil it for anyone. But let's talk about the game itself proper. One thing I would say overall is it goes in spurts. Some parts of the game seem like way too easy, and then you'll get to like a crazy choke point that you may have to play like many times
Well, I
over
think
and over.
maybe that's, some of the encounters are harder than others. I also think that your class choice is going to determine what missions are more difficult, what missions are easy. And Infiltrators is what I played, and I think it's just kind of pretty powerful class. You can use the cloak to actually just, like, oh shit, I'm taking damage.
Yeah.
Oops, I'm disappeared, and then you go sneak around, revive your allies and
Do you
stuff.
think that class is balanced though? Because I heard someone else saying they're
Balanced
playing that,
to
and I'm like,
win.
it almost, it makes a game too easy though, doesn't it?
I don't know. I think there's still challenging encounters. There's still stuff where you're like, oh shit, I wish I had a consistent rapid fire weapon to, take down these guys.
So
But,
they take away,
headshots they're really strong in Mass Effect, and a lot of the ability trees have headshot bonuses to your ammo type or your sniper type. So, the power of math will really, someone's got 3 levels of barrier armor or whatever, and it's like, boom, explode the head. But, it's still fun. I care more about having fun in that game rather than having, I don't play on Insanity, I just play on normal. Every once in a while, I'm Commander Shepard, I should be kicking ass, Got the best squad in Te Galaxy, so, I feel like it's challenging enough. I don't
The
get bored
gameplay's
with it.
only got better though from
The game
1
starts
to
out a little
2
rough.
to 3.
Will you guys all agree that the game starts out slow and a little?
It does start.
Well,
a little
I guess
rough.
they have to make sure, they want to make sure that people coming in brand new, they're like, people who just start with Mass Effect 3 have to have a good experience. So, it's totally...
the story I thought out of the
walking
gate was
through.
so hokey.
But
I was
it
like,
is a
oh my
little dumb.
gosh, I hope the whole game isn't going to be like this,
whole
and it's
thing,
not at all. It's like literally the first couple hours are like that,
like,
and then it really gets
It
going.
Oh my
starts
God.
off, Shepard's under house arrest, and I'm going to say, she's under house arrest.
That's if you played the Arrival DLC. I didn't. My Shepard's just like, been sitting around, got a little fat, chilling out.
Yeah,
Oh,
I wasn't
shit.
under arrest either. when
See,
I
I was under arrest, so I
Yeah.
played the Arrival DLC of 2.
That's weird. Yeah, I should. I
Which-
just didn't play Mass Effect 2 DLC.
Which
for
makes
whatever
it
reason.
kind of the story
Maybe
make
a
a
little
lot
better.
more sense. Where he's not just like, there's a whole reason why he wasn't in action, and the whole reason that his team had broken up. So it's kind of weird to not.
Yeah, I mean that wasn't just it wasn't what
Would've
the
been
story
nice if
was
they gave me
about
that
that
for free.
bothered me. It was the way the writing and the delivery and the way they framed some of the shots. It just seemed a little hokey.
Well, there's
but like
that
I said,
moment-
eventually it
Right.
gets going proper.
Well, it's still a cool, the Neo Vancouver whatever looks pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I will say that based on how far I am into the game, and I'm not hugely far, and I haven't tapped multiplayer. I really have no interest in the multiplayer.
It's really good.
And
I'm-
you
all right.
kind of have to have an interest in the multiplayer.
You might want to develop some interest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
And that we'll get
it
to that
does-
in a minute
it
because that
does
is pretty
taint the end.
controversial how they've handled that whole
But
thing.
well, I mean, there's the iPad apps as well. Now there's the first-person shooter on iPad or third-person shooter, and
Still
there's
third
the
person, yeah.
and then there's the other app that's they've just
That's
released.
just your codex, though.
But it's
your-
it does have a swiping mini game that contributes to your war
oh,
effort.
okay.
But yeah, I gotta say, I mean, for me, Mass Effect 2 was almost like a shining pinnacle of balance, where they learned from the mistakes of the first one, and they got
Like The Empire Strikes Back.
it was
the best Star Wars
the
movie.
Empire Strikes Back, where they got the balance right between combat and RPG and story, and you had this diversity of characters. I mean, and it actually, interacting with them was such a pleasure that it became such a, when I lost my character on the suicide mission in Mass Effect 2, I was absolutely gutted. It was a Solarian. He got the headshot. I was like, no, really fucking pissed off.
No.
Did you replay it then?
No, I didn't actually replay because I accepted
Consequences.
the decision, the consequences.
You're obeying
But I
them,
gotta say,
yeah.
this Mass Effect 3, it just seems where it's like they've almost tilted it. They've gone from the original, which was kind of RPG-ish heavy, Then the second one was the sweet spot, and this one they kind of like tilted more into the action area, which for me is a retrograde step.
But
I
disagree
don't know.
with that, man.
I completely
I don't
disagree.
agree.
It's a guns and
I guess I'll
conversation
admit
game
this
that
on
they still
camera,
have
but
to-
I have teared up a couple times in this game. I've had some crew members die. They were really well done scenes.
No, look, there is.
And I was like, I didn't think it would affect me that
Some
much. But it's
dire
like,
stuff.
I
it's-
disagree with your assertion that it's more of an action game. Like it's still,
Well, two is really an action game. This is a better action game. I think it's almost the same degree of action.
But I think
it's sharper.
people had
There's no
issues with the
question.
story in 2 because it was just like go get this person, go get
Well,
this
it's
person. make
formulaic,
them
but it's
happen.
really fun, you know.
Right, and I
kinda
think
wish-
this has a better story, and it's also like it's hard talking about a story in a game like this, where every single one of us in this room and every single one of our viewers have a
Plays it a
completely
little
different,
differently,
but
yeah.
have a different story, and it's
Well, yeah, and that is the beauty of Mass Effect. I don't know. There's something that just feels off. I mean, there are some things in there that are really touching that I've experienced so far. Going back to the Citadel, but it also seems a little more. It seems more limited. The fact that I go to the Citadel, I've only got like 4 or 5 choices now, whereas in the previous game I could wander the Citadel with
The
impunity.
Citadel's way bigger than it was in
But
2.
see,
Like,
the
here you
Citadel's
have a
bigger than
tiny-ass
it's the
miniature
Citadel's bigger
Citadel.
than it's ever been.
Here, at least you have
Yeah.
some big, expansive areas. you know?
See, I hate stuff
The
like
elevators
that.
I know-
for the
I
loading
know-
times.
I-
right?
Like,
know
for
you
instance,
do.
the ship. Like, when you go back to the Normandy, I hate that I have to run out, get on an elevator, go down 5 floors to, like, use the armory. Like, to me, when I come back to the Normandy, the armory should be right there.
Well, I think it's mostly loading times. When you do go to the Citadel, they do hook you up with the shuttle service. They're like, so where do you want to go? And he's like, I need to get to the hospital.
Right.
We'll send you a cab, buddy. And it's like,
Yeah.
thanks.
But
convenient.
That's actually another aspect of the game that is irking me in Mass Effect 3. I mean, I installed both discs to my 360, having to still do the disc change.
No, the disc flipping is...
Especially when all the discs, it seems like all the tertiary missions
Side quests.
or secondary side
Sometimes
quests
it
are on
seems
disc
a little
2.
random
It
when
was
they ask you
totally
to
random.
swap.
The first 5 hours I was playing, I felt like I had to switch the disc like
That's
2 or 3
not
times.
a huge deal to
and
me.
I
I don't know. It
haven't
just
switched the
doesn't
disc
bother
though
me
in the
that
last 15
Well, then
hours.
I get confused. It's like after I stop playing and I get home, like after work, and I go to play again, I'm like, so do I put in disc 1 because I'm booting the game up,
Right.
or do I put in disc 2? It turns
I think
into this.
if you finished a mission, I've never worried about swapping that. If you finish the mission, I think most of the getting the game started shit, the Normandy or whatever, it doesn't matter what disc
Yeah.
you're on. To me, it's like a minor inconvenience. I don't know. I don't think it's
I mean,
really worth discussing.
in the last
that
3 or
much,
4 hours, I've jumped discs 4 times.
I had that happen to me
Yeah.
at one point. It happened a lot.
It's
and then-
ridiculous.
but I haven't changed disc now in 15 hours.
Okay.
So
it gets
there
better.
was one moment that I think there's a
Discs.
moment where you could go one way or another, and one is disc 1 and one is disc 2. And if
Yeah.
you go disc 2, and then you want to go do that mission for disc 1, you have to go back to 1, and then all of a sudden now everything else is on 2, so now you have to flip back to 2.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason I'm bringing it up is because I've played multiple disc games for the last
Yep.
15 years. I've never dealt with a game like this before, where I literally
Mass
was
Effect's-
jumping
it's
between
the
disc 1 and disc 2.
or open,
Yeah, I
semi-open
mean, it's not a
nature of
big
Mass
deal,
Effect,
but
right?
it is worth mentioning.
It is something that does great, and I mean, it does seem that even though you say it's random, the more when I take the side quests, if I've got this 2 on my machine, I've got no changes, no swapping to do whatsoever, and I've actually been actively scanning planets and taking on the side quests just so I don't have to go back to the main missions right now and swap the disc because I'm lazy.
Let's talk about what you guys love about the game, though. I mean, we're kind of nitpicking
Yeah,
it right now
well,
and finding things we don't like, but what do you guys really love about it?
I mean, like I said, it's the story so far. It's great to have a crafted story. It's the character I always play in RPGs is that I play a good guy to my friends, and everyone else, it's like if you fuck with me, I'm taking you out.
Yeah.
So it's
So
like
it's basically like you are in real life.
pretty much, pretty much. But it's like I love that, and now every single because I've saved everyone in 1. Any person I could have saved in 1, I saved. Everyone in 2 was saved. I helped out every Alliance person. So it's like now it's every little bit is taking place in the game.
Is it paying off for you in the game?
So far, but it's even if it's not paying off, if I'm going to win or lose at the end, it's paying off through story. Because even there's a moment where you have to go to Grissom Academy. If you guys have read the books, you know a lot about that. I read all 3 of the books. I didn't read the 4th book because there was lots of
I didn't
issues
read
with
the
that
books.
one. So it just adds to there's so much of the universe that's there, and like I really was a big fan of the books, the story of the books, And now we actually get to go to that place that we read about in the books. People from the second game that you sent to that place are now there, that you're interacting with them. It just works so well. And I know people are out there and they're complaining that the story's not crafted as much as they would have liked it for them. And to me, it's like, no other game has done this.
Well, see,
No other game.
I mean, in
Yeah.
terms of being able to making some choice you made like 2 years ago actually relevant to
Or
what you're playing.
5
I mean,
years ago,
I don't think
even.
games have really done that.
No one does that. So to me, it's
But I think
like,
that was the idea, is that people thought this was going to be the series to do that.
Well,
And it
does
is so
does it does an
far,
okay job,
like-
I think.
Yeah.
The more you're invested in it, the more it'll give back to you.
it's doing better. And I mean, the other thing I'm liking is multiplayer. I've been playing a good amount with some people here.
That's a nice segue, by the way, into the multiplayer things. That's
Yeah.
another kind of controversial element of the game. You almost have to play the multiplayer in some way, shape, or form to finish the game with the best ending.
That's yeah. So I don't know. I'm enjoying it. I'm having fun. It's horde mode. It's not multiplayer. That I think they did it was really weird when they announced it and they called it multiplayer.
Yeah.
Because it's really not. It's
Yeah,
co-op.
It's just survival, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, so if
Co-op
people
with
out there
multiple
don't know what
players.
it is, throughout the game, you go on your N7 missions, there's side missions, you go and you take down a strategic area of the galaxy. If it's a depot, a research facility. So then then after Shepard takes that over, he brings in his Marines and says, watch this area, this is important. So in co-op, you now play those Marines.
Right.
And if you get those characters leveled up, you could actually send them back into your single player story. They become assets for you. I'm having fun. Sometimes I like.
Now, how do you guys feel about that, though? I mean, I feel it's a little shady because of the whole online pass thing.
I
Basically,
think
what
the
they're saying
game,
is like,
man.
look, if you want to get the best ending, you're going to have to use that online pass code that we sent you with the game. So if you give this to your brother or your cousin, or you go to sell it or whatever, whoever buys that game used is going to have to spend the $10 as well if they want to finish the game with the best ending. What other reason would they have to tie the campaign and the multiplayer together like that?
I do feel like with the day one DLC and with the way multiplayer and other things are integrated, it does feel like the marketing and money making is kind of, it's getting into the design in some way, and it's a revolting notion.
Do we know
to think about? It
for
doesn't make the
sure-
game not good,
Right,
but
right.
I think that is, you can see it. They're getting their hooks in there, and
It
Because
does
you can finish it
maybe a
without
little
it,
bit-
but
a
if you
little bit
want the
worrisome.
best ending,
I don't even know what the best ending is.
But is
That's
that?
so big about it.
But
Pretty
do we know?
subjective.
But do we know that for sure? Like, I don't know. I haven't read enough stories. I'm just asking you guys. Like,
Well,
if I would not have played multiplayer at all, would that truly affected my game? Because my
It does affect
readiness.
it,
I
yeah.
wish that they would lay it out, because the way it is,
I
they're
don't
just
know
really
though,
vague about it.
because they've, if you look at the achievements, you don't have. There's a lot of multiplayer achievements that all have single player options.
Yeah.
So they've said you really don't have to play multiplayer at all to get the full experience.
I think it will come.
well,
look,
does
it'll
that mean
come out
just finish the
eventually.
game, or does that mean
Best.
I-
I don't
get
know.
what the
that's
average-
what
the
I'm
average
asking.
person
I don't
can
know.
I'm
That's
sure,
the
I'm sure
things.
somebody is hard at work right now, having played it through
there a
to
super
the
guide
ending
for
with
this game?
multiplayer
Like a guide or
and
anything?
having played it through in single player, and then they'll attach the iPad apps to it and figure out how that works as well. And it does. It seems to have EA's sticky little paws all over it, where this is where I mean, the only thing that's missing is a Subway tie-in. And I think that's
think fresh?
Why
yeah.
is there no Subway in the Citadel?
Exactly. But I think that
Don't give them
they
any
had the
ideas,
codes in
Hoff.
that could be one of the things that perhaps I feel a little disconcerted about. But look, it's great to have Shepard back. I mean, it's one of those games that, while it doesn't rank as highly so far, and I am still only a small amount of time in, unfortunately. But it's still it still is a lot of fun. I'm actually going different. I mean, I try to save everybody and be nice for the first two. And this time, after the period of house arrest, I've decided my Shepherd is pissed. And now my Shepherd it's renegade 9 times out of 10, even going as far to tell a certain Krogan female that she was a bargaining chip. And that that's the only reason she's here. And you know what? I mean, it's refreshing to go off and do that and see how people are like, oh, well, hang on, you used to be like this, but now what's wrong with you? And especially when you unlock the DLC.
Right.
And that's another thing we need to talk about, that day one DLC, because I went in and downloaded it pretty quick so that I could get to that mission early and have that Prothean on my team.
Right.
But I do think, I mean, I've seen some interesting synopsis about this DLC that, it was done in a couple of months and it wasn't a cash grab, and I got to call shenanigans on that. I mean, given the way it's integrated, the amount of integration it takes with regards to speech and cinematics and all that stuff, I think this is something they cut from the game.
If you've
and
noticed,
it's got EA's fingers all
for
over it again.
big cinematics, I've noticed that in previous games, it used to be Shepard and the 2 team members were always kind of there. It feels like for bigger cinematics, they get rid of those 2 team members, and it's only Shepard and the person that's talking. So, I don't know. I mean, I'm not opposed to the whole Day 1 DLC thing. I think people get really worked up about it.
Well, when you find it on the disc, that's where.
But you didn't find it on the disc.
No, I'm not talking about this case.
Yeah.
But I'm not opposed.
People were accusing that it was on the disc.
I'm
that was
not
not
opposed
the
to
case.
Day 1 DLC, but when it's a core, and I said this on the end of the show last week, when it's a core part of Mass Effect mythology in the Prothean, that needs to be in the game. Honestly, take Jessica Chobot's character and make her downloadable content.
Well, but she's not playable either.
Right.
So,
All right, so let's wrap it up. Let's go around the horn here. I want to hear from you guys if the game has lived up to your expectations. Hoff, go.
yes. I haven't beat it yet. I'm terrified of the ending. I'm very worried. Last week at GDC, we were seeing those stories of people's like Shepard's not coming over from the second game, right? The save's not. And there was like a restless night, like Thursday at GDC, where I'm like, when I go home tomorrow, I better have, if I have to play 1 and 2 this weekend, I'm going to go, I'll do it. I'm not coming into work next week. I'm loving it. I'm having a good time. I think a lot of complaints that people had is they set their expectations even higher.
Yeah.
I think there's still limitations of what this generation of games could do. No game has done anything like this ever. I'm hoping more games next gen do it. It has to be built in. There's a lot of random little things that, I talked to a random person in one, they're coming up to me. It seems to know that what characters you took in one.
Yeah.
On certain missions, they're referencing stuff. I'm loving it. I think
Is it the best of the 3 so far, in your opinion?
I mean, it's hard to say. The story is key in this game, so it's hard for me to say give it a rank without beating it.
Sure, yeah.
Obviously it's the best controlled, it's the best action, and I know people out there have issues with it being an action game and a shooter.
Like that.
You like that guy?
Yeah, but it's like I would rather have an action game that's good like it is now than go back and play one for about a half hour.
One wasn't my favorite. One was not my favorite.
I would much rather have the shooting like it is now and be like, oh, it's an action game than a mediocre shooter.
Right. Justin, living up to expectations for you, or did it? You finished it.
I finished it. I feel like Mass Effect 2 is better. Even it's Mass Effect 2 is really formulaic with the recruit guy and then do the loyalty thing. But that's so satisfying. I think the best thing about the Mass Effect games are, really feeling attached to the characters, feeling like you're happy to have them in your squad. They're talking, you're fighting alongside them. 3, pretty good, but honestly, I wish they would have given me the DLC to review it with, because I felt like my squad's not big enough.
Yeah.
It's really disappointing to me. Everyone that I run into from 2 has a convenient reason why they can't get in my squad. And I'm like, sometimes they give an option like, hey.
Not in my game, though,
can you get
because
in
I've
my
been able
squad?
to talk most of them into getting the ones you'd want to play.
But no, there are a
You're
few.
able to talk them into
Well, these are the
joining
people
you.
in Mass Effect 1. I'm talking about, from what I'm seeing, all the new characters in Mass Effect 2, I'm like, hey, can you get in my squad? They're like,
Right.
I told my cousin I'd feed his cat. He's out of town. And I'm like, dude, I want some
I've-
powers.
I've got some STD from outer space that's flaring up.
But yeah,
That's
I mean,
because you gave it to him in 2, though, right?
So you like Mass Effect?
two
Too
to
bad.
me, recruiting characters. Also, the suicide mission in 2, I thought the ending sequence in 2 was way cooler than what ends up happening in 3.
No spoilers.
No spoilers, but I didn't feel like the stuff I did during the game, while the decisions still felt like they were big decisions and they were weighty, I wanted to see a little more of that reflected in the last sequence, rather than you make the decisions like, oh, this happened, and then in the final cutscene, you get a guy saying 2 seconds of okay,
I think you're saying too much already.
I'm gonna flip this table.
That is so
Marcus.
vague.
What about the table?
That is so vague.
Look, my love for Mass Effect 2 knows no bounds. I'm liking it a lot because I'm in the universe and it's my character that I've invested 70, 80 hours in and over the previous 2 games. It feels like ordering a phenomenally gorgeous steak and is just clumps of gristle in there every now and again, whether it be, you know, the sticky fingers of, you know, monetizing every single aspect of it, or, you know, the fact that you don't have as many squad members to choose from. If I'm raising an army for the end of days battle, I want every fucker that I ever met in Mass Effect to say, yes, I'm getting on the Normandy, I will fight to my last breath with you.
Well,
And,
these people,
you know,
what they actually do, they're like,
they're
hey, I'll help you
protecting-
in the last battle. Like, see you in the last battle.
Right,
Like,
they're
you
like,
wanna
I'm
come do
protecting
some
my
stuff, like, hang
homeland
out? They're
right
like, no,
now.
you don't.
It's like,
But
But
I
think
I'll catch
about
up to
how
you later.
incredible it could have been if every character you ever recruited in the first 2 games, you get ready to fight that last battle and you stand there in a line and you see all the people that you got on your side throughout all
I wish I
3
could
of
talk
those
about the
games.
ending some more.
Talk about how
I wish I could
powerful that
go
would
into
have
some
been.
more
But it's
vague
actually not just
specifics.
that, just, you know, not have them just, oh, I will turn up. I'll see you there. I've marked the date in my iPhone. I'll be there for that final battle. But I mean, I wanted to have, you know, the Normandy heaving with all these different characters interacting with each other. And then perhaps it's not, you know, their engine isn't at that state. I mean, I also would love one day to have a Mass Effect game where I have more than 2 backup members or squad members. If I have 6 kick-ass people on my team, I want to take them out day one. And, you know, it's like, all right, got this guy and this guy and this guy. They're all coming with me. It's a fucking posse. But I mean, that's just maybe, you know, the tech's not there right now. Mass Effect 2, meow. Mass Effect 3 so far, meow. But that may change over the next week and a half as I finally plod my way through it. It does. I gotta say, Mass Effect 2 was a breeze and a pleasure to play through. There are certain sections of Mass Effect 3 where it just feels a little more of a chore than before.
This is Shepard. Civilians have been evac. Special forces can take it from here.
That's it. Episode 202 of Invisible Walls in the books. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode. I realize it's maybe a little bumpy here or there, but as we keep doing this week after week, it will get smoothed out. Thanks, Jeremy, for coming on the show.
Thank you. I want to come back.
Yeah, you will definitely be back. Did a good job today on the show. Mr. Spear, as always, the Quiet Storm. And Marcus, you're replaced.
I am irreplaceable.
Anyway, we have some really big news coming to GameTrailers over the next couple weeks. We're probably going to announce it first on Invisible Wall, so make sure you stay tuned. I don't want to ruin it, but I'll say it's something that a lot of you have been waiting for a long time. So make sure you stay tuned to the show. We'll see you next week. Invisible Walls is up and out.